Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
They didn't run out of anything. They went to New Orleans and restocked, put provisions on, and went back out to sea and waited till they get back into the port of Galveston. I just saw Fox News talk about people on there are 3 cruise ships out. There's a Carnival Cruise Line, 2 of them, and I think a Royal Caribbean. They were supposed to dock somewhere in Texas, Galveston, and were not able to because of the hurricane. So they've been going to New Orleans to restock the ship with food, dancing girls, adult beverages, and so forth, stuff to play in the casinos. And they just referred to people on those ships as stranded. So I wonder, if you're on a cruise ship, are you stranded? I mean, it's under power. Air conditioning is working. You're out at sea. You've got pina coladas at an arm's length. I mean, whatever you want. How are you stranded, other than the fact that you can't get off? But maybe you could have gotten off when they get to New Orleans. I don't know. Anyway, strange things. Great to have you folks. Here we are, raring and ready to go. Another big broadcast day here at the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. The telephone number, 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, the email address, lrushball@eibnet.us. Let's look at some of the news coming out of Houston here. The economic news, by the way, is through the roof. We have a revised GDP that's going to be north of 3% economic growth. This is second quarter GDP up 3%. It was 2.7 was the original report, now projected to be at 3%. Jobs news continue to come in. Consumer confidence is at 17-year high. And President Trump on the way to Missouri today, where he is going to make a speech on tax reform to get this whole thing kicked off. And the drive-bys on CNBC are just livid when they found out Stephen Miller wrote the speech. Stephen Miller, of course, is a white nationalist, and he's an anti-Semite, even though he's Jewish. You haven't heard they called him an anti-Semite? Yeah, they call Stephen Miller an anti-Semite. I forget why. It doesn't matter. It was a couple of weeks. Some aftermath of some controversy. It might have been Charlottesville, because he wrote a Trump speech. By the way, folks, I'm sorry to be hopscotching all over the place, but neurons and synapses are firing here in my brain. I have we've got a couple stories today which document media behavior here. This is unprecedented. I don't think in my lifetime I have ever, and I've lived through the hatred of Richard Nixon and the hatred of Ronaldus Magnus and the hatred of George W. Bush. I have never seen this. I have never seen the out-and-out lying, knowing lying, the purposeful lying, mass lying that has been the namesake of the drive-by media since the election. A lot of people have been documenting a whole lot of things the media has been saying and comparing them to what Trump actually said. How many of you think Trump said that there were nice people, some fine people in the alt-right net? Do you know he never said it? He never said it. He never said any of the things that have been reported and re-reported and recycled. Literally things made up out of whole cloth. It would really be wise for all of you to not believe a thing anybody in the media says about Donald Trump if it is the slightest bit critical. What they're on today is Trump doesn't care. Trump doesn't care about people. Trump doesn't love people. Trump doesn't have empathy. They're just making it up. There isn't any evidence. Trump has not been aloof. He has not been off-putting. They're just making it up. They are literally making it up as they go. They are making it up according to the stereotypes they have established that are supposedly attached to Republicans or conservatives, right-wingers. They're just making it up. And I don't know how this is dealt with. Trump, in his speech, in his Phoenix rally, tried to deal with it for 30 minutes. He ran through, he had it written down in front of him. Here's what I said. And he castigated CNN and the New York Times, and he was dead right. He was 1,000% right in what he said. And look how they treated that. They, of course, this man is insane. This man is unfit for office. This man is unhinged. This man is deluded. It is the media that's insane. It's the media that's deranged. It's the media that's unhinged. And it's the media that is just out and out lying. They're not even trying to be subtle about it. And they're not trying to be trickery about it and using any trickery or any deception. They're just blatant, in-your-face lying. And they are counting on the fact that most people are not going to know and are not going to find out. They're not even being subtle. They're not even trimming things around the edges. They are just bold-faced, making it up in case after case after case, particularly Trump's comments after Charlottesville. There's also a great piece today in the Federalist. These are all long pieces. I mean, they print out to 15 pages. I can't go through all of it. But there is a tremendous summary at thefederalist.com on how there is, to this day, not a single shred of evidence that there was any collusion between Trump or anybody in his team and the Russians having to do with the election in 2016. There, to this day, there is not a shred of evidence. There's another story that points out the intel community inside the Beltway, deep state, whatever you want to call it. If you disagree with them, no matter who you are immediately tagged as a conspiracy theorist. The intel community is demanding 100% fealty. And if anybody strays, if anybody doesn't believe, then the intel community launches into them via the media with the ongoing effort to slander, or discredit, any number of things. There isn't any evidence for it. There's no evidence yet whatsoever. And it's going to come back as soon as the hurricane story winds down, which it will at some point. When the drive-bys figure that they have maximized whatever they can get out of this story. They talk about Trump has no empathy. They talk about Trump doesn't care. Who's using who here? What does the media do when a disaster comes along? Who uses who here? And for what end, for what purpose? So when they're through with this, when they think they've gotten as much out of this as they can for whatever purpose, but I guarantee you it's not going to be patriotic. It's not going to be oriented toward making America great or making America look great. The focus on Houston is going to be what's wrong with Trump, what's wrong with America, what's wrong with charities, what's wrong with this, why didn't people believe climate change? It's going to be nothing but a negative charter. They'll eventually get tired of it. They're going to get back to this Russia business. But I'm not kidding you. Trump's going to Missouri. He's at Springfield, and he's going to try to get the ball rolling on tax reform today. And CNBC went off on Stephen Miller when they found out he wrote the speech. They think Gary Cohn should have written the speech. And they're really ticked off that Gary Cohn didn't write the speech, that Stephen Miller did, because Stephen Miller's a nationalist. What's a nationalist? It's nothing. It's another word for being an American. It's a nationalist is become a dirty word. That means you care only about your country, and you don't care about the downtrodden and the homeless and the thirsty and the poor from around the world. You don't care. It's what a nationalist is. So they're trying to discredit Stephen Miller as being one of those kind of guys. Just, it's never ending, and it's just... I tell you what I actually think, and there's a lot of hope here, I will admit. But I think that the media is setting itself up, as are many groups on the left, for a backlash that they're not going to see coming. There is already, what I mean by this, there's already growing fatigue with everybody under the sun being a racist. I mean, it's more than growing fatigue. There is genuine repulsive anger. People are fed up with it. And I'm talking about people who are not accused of it. I'm talking about average, ordinary Americans watching the news, listening to everybody in the world be called a racist or a neo-Nazi or a white supremacist. They're fed up with it. The point is they're not believing it. And the same thing, the media is not that a backlash is going to stop them. See, nothing that happens is going to stop the media from doing what they do. So they're always going to have some degree of effectiveness because there's always going to be a certain percentage of the population which, for whatever reason, is going to believe everything they see, read, or hear in the media. But it's gotten to the point here that more and more people are questioning it. More and more people are beginning to have problems with it because it's just every day. It's Trump did this, Trump's doing this, Trump's horrible here, Trump's horrible there, Trump doesn't care about people, at some point you run out of, even if you hate Trump, you run out of your ability to soak it all up and believe it. People who hate Trump will have a lot bigger reservoir for it than people who are ambivalent, and people who like Trump are going to have no patience for it whatsoever. And the number of people who like Trump is not shrinking, contrary to what the drive-bys would like you to believe. Now to Houston, a little news there. 14 people in Houston County arrested on looting charges over the past 48 hours. Hurricane Harvey's moved on. The rain has stopped in Houston, and the floodwaters are receding. In some cases, they're receding at a pretty decent clip. Why are you looking at you? Have you not heard? Oh, I was looking at me like you haven't heard that said anywhere. The rain has stopped. I mean, have you seen the radar? I mean, the media may be telling you it's still raining there, but if you look at the radar, it isn't. Harvey has moved on. Floodwaters, look, they will naturally recede at some point once the rain stops, but it's got a long way to go, and it's going to be devastating when that floodwater recedes. When we see what's beneath the water, the damage that's there, it's going to be shocking. Anyway, There's a growing body of thought that people should be allowed to loot. The media is putting forth the idea that it's not really fair to call people trying to survive looters. It's unfortunate. They said tags them with a term that might stay with them for the rest of their lives, and all they are is decent people trying to hang on, trying to survive. Tom Lamas, the ABC World News Tonight anchor, said, "We are witnessing looting right now at a large supermarket in the northeast part of Houston. Police have just discovered a body nearby." Apparently, after Tom Lamas reported witnessing looting, people went to Twitter and took issue with the fact that he was tweeting about looters before tweeting about the body. Other people were upset at the idea of characterizing people just trying to get food during a disaster as looters. This disgusting tweet could only serve to make already traumatized people feel more unsafe. You and ABC Lamas should feel ashamed. Pretty sure they're called this trying to survive. Houston's been devastated. How do you loot bread and peanut butter? So the movement is on Twitter to not allow looting to be called looting. Now, from the Washington Post, David Von Driel. Harvey's burdens will fall hardest on the poor. You could see this coming 35 years ago. For those of you new to the program, let me tell you a joke. Let me tell you how stereotypical this is. Harvey's burdens will fall hardest on the poor. One day, God's watching the Oprah Winfrey Show. And he says, you know what? This thing with humanity is not working. Humanity is a disaster, and I'm tired of the experiment. So God called USA Today. He called the New York Times, he called the Wall Street Journal to tell them the world was going to end in 24 hours, that humanity had blown it, or he had blown it, maybe a combination of two, but it was over. The New York Times asked for an exclusive. They were denied. The way the story, God to End World, was handled at the newspapers went like this. Washington, or the USA Today headline, "We're done." The New York Times, God says world to end tomorrow. Experts await details. Washington Post, God says world to end tomorrow. Women and children hardest hit. That joke goes back to the 80s. This is how stereotypically you can predict it. So here we have in the Washington Post, Harvey's burdens will fall hardest on the poor. Here's how it starts. There's an insight, sometimes credited to W.B. Bat Masterson, the buffalo hunter turned Wild West lawman turned hard-drinking gambler who ended up as a pal of Teddy Roosevelt and died a famous New York sports writer. The insight goes like this. Everybody gets the same amount of ice in life. The rich get theirs in the summer, the poor in the winter. The catastrophe on the Texas coast makes little or no distinction between rich and poor, for now anyway. But the burdens will fall hardest on the poor. So if you're in Houston, you're in the sound of my voice. If you're middle class, or God forbid even rich, and I saw some rich homes nearly all underwater, and if you've lost a lot of property, if you've lost members of your family in this natural disaster, you should be comforted by the fact that the poor are going to have it even harder than you've had it. Here is the last paragraph of the gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching op-ed piece by David Von Driel in the Washington Post, Harvey's burdens will fall hardest on the poor. Ready? Closing paragraph. It is on the tired backs of the poor that the heaviest burdens of the hurricane will fall, and they will bear that weight for the longest time. May the sympathy we feel for them in this hour of disaster harden into something more lasting. Respect. So, no matter which of you in Houston have lost how much, it doesn't matter. There's always somebody that's going to lose more, and you need to remember that. And it's this. No, I can imagine. What's wrong with that, Mr. Limbaugh? Do you think that's wrong? I think what's wrong here is in the middle of a disaster, still have to divide people. A disaster is a disaster for all of the people that experience it. But to try to subdivide it and to say that some people have, it's politicizing it, is exactly what it is. And I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of these emotional levers, people trying to advance political agendas on the backs of the poor. I mean, for crying out loud, it stands to reason. There's nothing inherent. They're trying to, there's an undercurrent here. There's something really wrong with America. It's really bad. The poor hardest hit. It's a media meme. It is a narrative. It's a requirement. It's oriented toward dividing people and promoting guilt and all of these other things when it's frustrating. Maybe it's getting to me a little bit more than it should because of the things I have discovered today. The media has been doing, actually starting longer than today, but it's been codified today with some in-depth research about how they're just out and out lying about what Donald Trump is saying. And then you've got people in his own administration falling for the lies, like Tillerson and Gary Cohn. The lack of curiosity and the willingness to believe the worst is a frustrating thing. Anyway, let me take a break here at the bottom of the hour. We'll come back. Wait till you hear how they are thinking of dealing with opposition to immigrants in Europe. It's called oxytocin. And oxytocin. And if you don't know what that is, stand by, be patient, because you will very soon. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Rush Limbaugh serving humanity with oodles and gobs of compassion here behind a golden EIB microphone. A group of researchers from Germany and the United States have published a study that says that doping xenophobic populations with massive quantities of oxytocin. Do you know what oxytocin is? It's not a narcotic, even though the name sounds like a familiar. It's a hormone, and it's laced with estrogen. Estrogen-linked hormone oxytocin will cure nationalism. You see, nationalism is a mental disease. Nationalism is a sickness. Nationalism is a mental disorder, and it needs to be fixed. And the way they're thinking of fixing it in Germany and in Europe is massive doses of oxytocin. Supposedly, this will make native citizens more accepting and generous towards immigrants who simply want free handouts from Western taxpayers. That's all. There's no reason to hate them. There's no reason to be suspicious of them. And the reason you hate them and the reason you're suspicious is because you're a bigot. It's because you're a racist. It's because you're a xenophobe. It's because you're a nationalist. And now scientists think they can fix you. They can rid you of your nationalism and your xenophobia by giving you oxytocin, a hormone linked to estrogen. And they think this is perfectly normal. This is perfectly fine. The study says accommodating the large influx of migrants not only challenges the humanitarian capacities of European countries, but also requires their native populations to adjust to rapid growths in ethnic diversity, religious pluralism, and cultural differentiation. However, the impetus to adapt to changing societal ecosystems is susceptible to considerable inter-individual heterogeneity. So, resistance to this transition often goes along with xenophobic sentiment, and as a consequence, recent elections in Europe have favored populist candidates who have openly expressed xenophobic attitudes toward refugees. So essentially, this is a device to change the mental structure of people who are voting in ways European elites disapprove of. It's just incredible. And folks, if it's happening there, it's not long before the idea will migrate and be an illegal immigrant here in the United States as well. Particularly if some wacko scientist claims that it worked. Yeah, we found this nationalist, we found this xenophobe, we found this sick. It's like a Bannon type, yeah. And we gave him massive doses of this stuff, oxytocin. This guy became the most peaceful and loving and welcoming individual ever. So I can see, and I'm not kidding, I can see down the road a vaccine for xenophobia, a vaccine for nationalism, a vaccine to rid you of the idea that your country and where you live is first and foremost important to you. That's not acceptable. That's not good. And in Europe, with German researchers, they're exploring pharmacological ways to rid people of this horrid disease, nationalism and xenophobia and what have you. It's shocking. Folks, it's not just here. It's the elites around the world, and they're intolerant. These are the ones that are unaccepting. They are not open to ideas. This is somewhat related, because in the sports drive-bys, they won't let go of this Colin Kaepernick thing. They just won't let it go. Oh, speaking of which, in fact, let me tell you what's coming next. Based on this story, here's the headline. It's from the New York Times. ESPN football analyst walks away disturbed by brain trauma on the field. Ed Cunningham, 48 years old, a former NFL player, resigned as a college football analyst for ESPN and ABC in the prime of his broadcasting career. If Ed Cunningham had not already seen enough, he would be back in a broadcast booth on Saturday afternoon serving as the color analyst for another top college football game, televised on ABC or ESPN. It is the work he has done each fall for nearly 20 years, but Cunningham resigned from one of the top jobs in sports broadcasting because of his growing discomfort with the damage being inflicted on the players he was watching each week. The hits kept coming right in front of him until Cunningham said he could not in good conscience continue his supporting role in football's multi-billion-dollar apparatus. He said, "I take full ownership of my alignment with the sport. I can just no longer be in that cheerleader spot." So you know what this is? This is going to begin what's called the shaming of anybody who earns money in any way connected to football. How dare you? How dare you earn your money on the backs of people suffering brain damage and concussions and eventual CTE and perhaps suicide? You're encouraging this. You're broadcasting this stuff, and you're telling people it's great, and you're encouraging them, and you're promoting it, and you're making them watch it. It's fueling this beast, this immorality. How dare you? You think he's going to be the only? The way people become famous today, as they've seen it happen on Twitter and on Facebook, is you get part of a movement that the media loves. Well, right now, we live at a time where the media is predisposed to oppose and try to destroy anything that is distinctly American. And in that list of things is the National Football League and football, college, high school, you name it. It is a uniquely American game. And that's why they love Kaepernick. Kaepernick came out and protested not just the country, but the NFL. And this is what the media is. The media is supportive of anybody and anything that is anti-American, all while claiming that they're the best Americans, all while claiming they love America. We journalists love America. We are the biggest patriots. We are the ones who want America to be perfected. We're the ones who want America to reach its glowing ideals. And that's simply a crock. They are part of the Obama-esque group of people that believe this country is flawed and unjust and immoral and deserves to be punished for all of its grievances. And football is on that list because football kills. Football maims. Did I not tell you when this whole thing began with concussions and the social justice warriors getting on this case? I told you it was years ago that the days of the National Football League, or football as you and I know it, are numbered. We just don't know how many they have left, but it's over. And this is just the latest example. So here you have a 48-year-old announcer who is going to be the biggest star he's ever dreamed of being in his life. Nobody ever heard of this guy, even though he's a color analyst on ESPN. I mean, there's so many of them out there now. They're cookie cutters. They're a dime a dozen. But this guy, Ed Cunningham, he's going to stand out. He can no longer be a party to this. Not in his name. No, ma'am. No, sir. Not in his name are young men going to be disfigured and permanently damaged. Not in his name is it going to happen. And he's going to be celebrated and he's going to be a hero. And then anybody else who doesn't follow along, depending on who they are, this is the beginning of the whole process of shaming anybody who earns money connected to football, anybody who acquires fame. Now, the players will be exempt for a while. But if the players end up protesting the flag or protesting the NFL or protesting America like Kaepernick did, they will be celebrated and they will be promoted. So keep a sharp eye. When the left gets going on things, there's never an end. There's just always the next phase. You think at some point in every leftist movement, okay, that's it. They don't have anywhere else to go. But they always have somewhere new to go. I imagine there are those of you out there saying, Rush, you're overreacting. No, I'm not. And he may be the only guy this season, but I guarantee you, he's going to be so celebrated. I mean, there's already a story about the guy in the New York Times. He's more famous quitting his job than he ever was doing his job. He's going to be a hero. He's going to be on TV as often as he wants to be. I just can't do it any longer. I can't, not with what I've known, not with what I've learned. I can't sit here and actually encourage people to enjoy this game knowing what it is doing to the guys playing. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. You'll be a hero. And the pressure will build on others to follow suit. And pretty soon it's going to be Roger Goodell in the booth doing game play-by-play and color commentary. By the way, I think I've been misunderstood on the oxytocin story based on some emails that I checked. The story is from the website zerohedge.com. Study doping Western cultures with oxytocin will cure hatred of refugees. Folks, it's not the immigrants that are going to be given the massive doses of oxytocin. It's the natives. It is presumed, let's use a country, it's presumed the people of Germany are xenophobic, nationalistic, and racist, and they're unwelcoming. Well, all of the immigrant populations that are trying to get in the country, refugees, immigrants, militant Islamists, whatever. It's not the immigrants that are going to be given the oxytocin so that they stop hating the people who live in the country where they're migrating to. The populations of these countries are going to get the oxytocin so that they will not hate the migrants. You must understand, the problem with immigration is the nationalistic, racist, xenophobic native populations of these countries who are simply, because of their bigotry, unwilling to be friendly and accept this massive swarm of illegal immigrants and refugees. And so they are going to be given the massive doses of oxytocin, not the immigrants. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with the immigrants. They're perfectly fine. They're normal people. It's the native populations that are the problem here. Now to the phones. Always try to get started in the first hour. We start Corpus Christi. Joseph, glad you waited, sir. Welcome to the EIB Network. Hi.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Very well. Very well. Thank you.
Outstanding, sir. Thank you for taking my call. I guess it's afternoon where you are. I just wanted to call and make a point. When POTUS flew in yesterday, I'd rushed home from evacuating and was cleaning up around the area, cleaning up the church. I'm just south of Fort A. And I was driving west of town towards the airport and wanted to make the point that, everyone was busy taking responsibility on hand. No one was concerned with the president flying into town or necessarily what the First Lady's footwear was. We were in a time of need, so we were getting to work. And I thought that it was a small microcosm example, sort of where we are culturally, how the abundance of free time leads us to kind of a pedantic, nonsense headspace. And when it comes time to actually get to work, you don't have time to worry about footwear or little things that often breed the negative conflict in the media right now. It's take responsibility, pick up your axe, find a neighbor in need, and get to work.
So you were not affected one way or the other by the president's arrival. He did not do anything to dampen your spirits nor lift them much. And you later found out the media was going nuts over the kind of shoes the first lady wore. You didn't care about that because you didn't have time to.
Exactly, sir. I mean, we're a very tight community down there, and Corpus Christi was lucky enough, to kind of dodge it, and Port A, Aransas caught the bulk of it. So
right, because the drive-by said Corpus Christi was going to get the bulk of it.
Yes, sir. I mean, we lost shingles, houses were torn down. I mean, they needed hands to help pick stuff up, and we'll be rebuilding for a while. But the bigger point was that TVs weren't cued. We weren't looking for negatives. It was just, how can I get out and help? And it says a lot to the culture down there. As a supporter of our commander-in-chief, of course I would have loved to go to the airfield and see him, but it was important to stay off the roads to find someone who needs help. And kind of in that moment, I saw that we've kind of redacted ourselves culturally because we have such an abundance of time to spend listening to a misplaced media when really you should just be taking responsibility and getting after it.
No, I understand that. In fact, I understand it totally. You may have heard this, folks. You may have seen it. Grab audio soundbite number 6. CNN ran into a recently rescued woman and her children in a shelter in Houston, thrust a microphone in her face, and wanted to know what it was like. And here is how. That's not the question from the reporterette. You're with your children. We've heard stories of mothers trying to save their children from the rushing waters. Can you tell us?
Up to 4 feet of water to go get them food on the first day. Yeah, that's a lot of but y'all sitting here, y'all trying to interview people during their worst times. Like, that's not the smartest thing to do. Like, people are really breaking down, and y'all sitting here with cameras and microphones trying to ask us what the is wrong with us.
I'm so
and you really trying to understand it with the microphone still in my face, with me shivering cold, with my kids wet, and you still putting the microphone in my face.
Right, and what she knows is that reporterette's got a bottle of water and a sandwich waiting for her behind the stage, and this woman hadn't eaten in a couple of days. She's trying to get her kids fed and dry, trying to make everybody feel comfortable, and she runs into a bunch of reporters who are dressed properly and of the proper deportment, and she just lost it. And I think that sentiment, well, I know it was applauded. Everybody who heard this was cheering this woman on. And it's not the first time something like this has happened. But remember, it's the media constantly telling us who's in touch and who's not, and who's sensitive and who isn't, and who cares and who doesn't. And in that, they're always wrong, too. Yeah, I didn't quite finish my point about Kaepernick, and I'm not going to have time to do it here. But what I was trying to say was, yes, we all have free speech. But that doesn't mean that there are no consequences to it. And if people want to be able to say, Kaepernick, he can say whatever he wants. You have no right to react. BS, I don't. That's the whole point. You have no right to be heard, and you have no right to be exempt of criticism. Here we are, folks, back at it. El Rushbo, doing what I was born to do. And I cannot tell you how great it is to be back. I mean, I had fun when I was gone for a week, but I love being back here, folks. I just do. Here's the phone number if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882. If you want to send an email, I check them, as you hear. It's elrushbo at eibnet.us. We're going to get to these examples of the media literally making it up about Trump. The New York Times has had to issue 4 blatant corrections, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. We have here a montage. Actually, play number 1, too. This, from last night on C-SPAN, they aired a panel discussion in the American Bar Association about the Trump administration, its relationship with the media. And they had our old buddy Jim Rutenberg, who is now the media columnist at the New York Times. He was on the panel. He had some things to say. Now, Rutenberg is one of the few reporters at the New York Times that has been fair. Now, that kind of launches me into another area. That's the wrong word. The media claims it's fair to do this or fair. That ought not be one of the ways in which the media is it fair? Was that a fair report? Was that a fair? I've always been bugged by that. Rutenberg has never misquoted me. Rutenberg has never put words in my mouth. And he has never lied about me. He's never accused me of saying things I didn't say or any of that. But he's nevertheless, he is a standard issue New York Times journalist. So he's on this panel, and it's incredible to get their perspective on things. And remember, Rutenberg now is the media columnist, so he's like the Howard Kurtz. What he writes about is the media and how they're doing their jobs and all of that. And this is what he said about the media and Trump.
There's also been a sustained campaign to undermine the press. It's several decades old, at least 4 or 5 decades old, and its intention is to discredit us, and it happens nightly on Fox News with the biggest cable news audience. It happens daily with Rush Limbaugh with the largest radio audience. The press we don't campaign back. It's not our job. Our job actually is to piss people off sometimes. And so, we are the messenger, and that's not always a face that people want to see when it's news that they disagree with or it's bad news for their political side or what have you. So we're kind of not in the business of being liked.
Oh, Jim, but you are. You are most certainly in the business of being liked. You wanted to be loved by Obama, and you wanted to be loved by Bill Clinton, and you wanted to be loved by Hillary, and you wanted to be loved by Michelle Mybelle Obama. You want to be loved by all these people on the left. There's no question. You people in the media, you want to be in the club. You want to be in the establishment. And you know whose bread you have to butter to do that. By the way, just as an aside, it wasn't all that long ago that there isn't a New York Times reporter in the world who would ever have said the word piss in a panel discussion with the American Bar Association. This is not, I'm not being critical of Rutenberg. It's just a sign of our culture and where it's headed. And by the way, Rutenberg's not the only one. I refuse to use the word, but it's common. I mean, you'll hear it commonly expressed on Fox News. You'll hear it on CNN. And I have standards, ladies and gentlemen. We attempt here to maintain those standards each and every day. We don't always meet the standard, but we try. But here you have an august panel, the American Bar Association, and they kind of guys that could piss you off. But seriously, my grandfather would be appalled. He would simply be appalled. To him, the American Bar Association was the Supreme Court. He so valued being a lawyer that an association of lawyers should have been the greatest representation of all of humanity. That's how much he respected the law. But anyway, Rutenberg says that there's a campaign to undermine the media that is several decades old, to discredit the media. I think all of this, Jim, we're simply defending ourselves. I mean, if you want to look at who got this ball rolling, I mean, it's you guys. I was minding my own business one day, and then I became a talk show host. And 6 months after I became a talk show host, I became a racist, and then I became a sexist, and then I became a bigot, and then I became a homophobe. And all of that was said about me in the media. But before I ever got a radio show, nobody ever said any of that stuff about me. Nobody thought that about me. Nobody accused me of any of that until 6 months after I got a radio show. And then it was Katie Barnadores, and then that's what I have been in your media, Jim, ever since you guys first heard of me. So what am I supposed to do? Just sit here and laugh at it and take it? And I'm by no means the only one. There is an entire... I mean, the purpose of the left, of which the media is the functioning leader right now, is to discredit all credible opposition, because you can't beat us in the arena of ideas. So, this campaign to undermine the media, listen to this. We put together a montage. It was predictable. When Trump before he got to Texas yesterday, I told everybody in this program, and it didn't take a great brain, what they were going to say. Trump doesn't care. Trump doesn't have empathy. Nobody wants to hug Trump. Everybody wanted to be hugged by Obama. Nobody wanted. Obama was the biggest cold fish wrap. Obama was not warm and fuzzy. He was a cold, calculating guy. And Bill Clinton could fake sincerity and fake sympathy and fake empathy like nobody. But before Trump even got to Texas, Trump is such a pig. Trump's such a bore. Women are repulsed by Trump. People don't want to be anywhere near Trump. Trump probably smells. Trump probably stinks. Nobody is going to want to be hugged by Trump. That was what they set up. And here's a montage of them attacking Donald Trump yesterday, last night, and this morning.
People want to see empathy from this president. It is certainly not his strong suit.
Very little in terms of empathy from this president.
A lack of expression of empathy for the victims.
The dimension of empathy, he just can't get there and be that empathetic leader.
The empathy part is one that the president struggles with.
There was something missing. That's the empathy for the people.
Empathy. That's, to me, the soul of morality.
Whether or not President Trump exhibits empathy.
Did Donald Trump have his empathy moment today?
He didn't have the empathy moment.
He didn't really show a lot of compassion or empathy towards the victims.
Failing to note with sufficient empathy.
Critics accuse him of not showing any empathy.
A lot of never Trump conservatives in that montage, folks. A lot of them. Now, it wasn't just drive-by leftist media. There were some never Trump conservatives here. Now, who sends the memo out that says the word for today is empathy, and the point is that Trump hasn't got any? How is it that so many people on so many different networks end up saying the same exact thing? Is it that they all think exactly alike, which is a distinct possibility? How do they know? Where is it written that what victims of a disaster want is empathy? How about victims of a disaster wanting results? What good does empathy do you? At the end of the day, what good does it do you? By the way, I'm not conceding that Trump doesn't have it. I think it's just the exact opposite. You know why? This is what they don't get about Trump. While Trump was at the fire station yesterday, and he was going through his rah-rah and rally, and he's talking about how great Texas is, and, yeah, it's bad, but these people are Texans, and Texans can handle anything. And when he said that, he then looked, I said, what a crowd, what a great crowd. And so the media, this guy thinks it's a rally. This guy's looking at it like people came out to see him. They blew their gaskets because they just don't understand the guy. They just, and they make no effort to understand Trump. They don't understand his tongue-in-cheek humor. They just, and they have no desire to. They just want to categorize anything or anybody that doesn't behave according to the code book for Inside the Beltway is a lost cause. It's funny to watch. Trump's commenting on the crowd, great crowd, look at, and he's waving at them and so forth, and it just offends them all to hell. So they double down on the fact that Trump has no empathy. But we heard our first caller. I don't mean to be insensitive here, but at the end of the day, why do we think presidents have to be empathetic? It's because that's what the media has shown us. We have phonies like Bill Clinton who show up at disasters and hug people and fake tears with them and so forth. Oh, he cares. Oh, my God, did you see that? The media has a cow. He cares so much. Oh, it's wonderful. Meanwhile, what got done? In the meantime, we have a president who is a builder. What is going to be needed in Houston and southeastern Texas? Building. Rebuilding. Construction. We have a president who comes from that area of life and knows it and is an expert in it. Infrastructure, if you will. The idea that a citizen or a group of citizens in a disaster can be calmed and satisfied by empathy from a president. You watch, I'm going to be said to have no empathy because of these comments. But as the mayor of Realville and a supreme realist, I mean, yeah, I guess it can make people feel better, but really? It doesn't. Empathy, sympathy. I think what these people are actually, they're not even talking about empathy. They're actually meaning sympathy. And what they're saying is that Trump doesn't have the ability to feel sorry for people. He doesn't have the ability to put himself in other people's shoes. He just doesn't care. Trump doesn't care about people. And, of course, that's the meme. The drive-bys are they're continuing to play, and the Democrats are playing class envy in the eventual rebuilding. John King at CNN reacting, I think, you heard this montage, when it was just a never-ending drubbing of Trump and his lack of empathy. This afternoon at CNN on Inside Politics, I had to read this transcript twice because this seems so out of place for CNN. And it made me wonder, does John King know that his days there are numbered? Here, listen to this and see what you think.
It was striking to me that even in the middle of this visit to Texas, to go to a state in the middle of a disaster, if you look at social media and elsewhere, Trump is in the eye of the beholder. There was this big political debate even before he hit the ground, as they were leaving the White House, whether it's Melania's shoes, the president's hat, and then what he said. Did he show enough empathy? Can there not be the president went, it was appropriate for him to go, he stayed out of the way, which was the smart thing to do, he got a briefing, he knows more today than he did yesterday. Why did we get immediately into the muckety-muck?
Whoa! That obviously wasn't on a teleprompter. There's nobody at CNN would have put that on a prompter, so that was from John King's mind and heart. Can we just not report the guy went, he stayed out of the way, he got a briefing, he knows more now than he did before? Can we just do that? Why do we have to get into the muck? Wow. Of course, they could ask themselves that every day. But the fact that it was asked on CNN, I'm telling you, there's some things going on here. If there's anybody in the media that's responsible, and that's a big if, but if there is, folks, there have to be some people troubled by what this industry or business is doing, led by the New York Times, starting with this whole Russian-Trump collusion story that there is no evidence of. There's zero, there's not a shred after all of this time. The outright lies the media told about what Trump said after Charlottesville in his 3 separate statements. They lied about all 3. There are people in the media who know this. Are there people in the media troubled by it? Well, you would think that in any group of people, there can't be total unanimity. Got to be some strays. Not everybody thinks the same about everything, except when you get into liberalism, it pretty much is rote. Let me take a break. We'll come back and resume with your phone calls. Hang on and be patient. And back to the phones here on the Rush Limbaugh program, Fredericksburg, Virginia. Hi, Carl. Great to have you. I'm glad you called, sir.
Thanks, Rush. First-time caller. Love listening to your show. You were talking earlier about Germany giving oxytocin to the natives that had some really strong opinions about nationalism, and that it contained estrogen. I think a thing that really needs to be realized is estrogen is a female hormone. So not only is it an attack on trying to re-educate people and get them to embrace this whole immigrant issue, but it's also taking away on malehood and making them more feminine because males are a threat to their society, I believe.
Well, that has been a trend in human culture, not just here in America, but there's been a trend, and it happens to coincide with the advent of the modern era of feminism. Now, feminism has been around since, well, you go back to the suffrage movement in the early 1900s, way back further than that. But the modern era of feminism, that era popularized by people like Gloria Steinem and the others, traces back to the late 60s and the early 70s. And it wasn't long after this rebirth of the modern era of feminism that we also began to learn of the problems of young boys and their lack of ability to pay attention and to sit down and shut up and be quiet in school. And so then we had the discovery of a disorder, attention deficit disorder, and then hyperactive attention deficit disorder. And these disorders were met with drugs that were designed to slow everything down and to calm these young little urchins so that they would sit quietly and shut up and not pull on the girls' ponytails in the desk in front of them and not throw spitballs at the teachers and all this other stuff that young boys do. And since then, the effort to tame the wild male has been ongoing. There have been psychological efforts. There have been financial attempts. There have been sociological, like accusing men in their natural state of being predators. No woman is safe, including a wife and the children. And this slowly built, and it slowly crept into the fabric of society to the point that young men are not going to college in near the numbers they used to, and thus are not being educated formally in near the numbers they used to be. And it's an ongoing thing. You know, in the modern American culture today, they make up in order to keep this image of men alive. They make up stories of rampant rape and abuse on campus. Just make them up. Magazines like Rolling Stone. And so now in Europe, research says we need to give it's women too here, for not just the men. We need to give them oxytocin, which is linked to estrogen. It's not an estrogen per se. It's linked to it, designed to rid them of nationalism and xenophobia, to make them lovable and engaging and accepting of these immigrants from all over the world coming to their countries. Okay, Todd in Grand Island, New York, it's great to have you on the program. You're next, sir. How's it going?
What an honor to speak with you. Thank you for everything that you've done.
Well, I appreciate
Continue to do.
Thank you, sir.
I had to get right to my point of reference to the 2018 election. You made a point saying that if the Democrats win 3% of what Donald Trump, in the margin of 3% area where Donald Trump took over, and the Democrats win those seats, and also if they win the seats that Hillary would have won, and we gave them all them, they would still lose 6 seats total. I fear the factor that even this is prior to Trump renting out stadiums and making rallies against the Republicans. I feel that the voters are not going to vote for the existing Republicans, which are rerunning for re-election, and we may lose those seats.
Yeah, this is we started talking about this yesterday, and I'm glad you called because you have served here as a reminder for me. I pledge to finish this discussion. The Republican Party, folks, is cracking up. And it's happening. It's amazing. It appears to be on purpose. Now, let's walk through this. Well, you know the drill. The Republican Party, let's go back to the days Obama gets elected in 2008, and Republicans and conservatives all over the country are in a deep depression or panic because we know what Obama's intentions are. We know that he's going to nationalize health care. We know that he is going to weaken the United States militarily. We know because he said so that he's going to transform America. We know that he believes America is not a place of exceptionalism. And we know that he doesn't think America is great. We know that he thinks America is guilty. We know that he believes that America needs to be cut down to size or to pay a price for all of these injustices. And we're seeing the outgrowth of that. Now, what do you think Antifa is? Antifa is Obama as violence. Obamaism is violence. That's exactly what Antifa is. No different in terms of what their beliefs are than what Obama's beliefs are. Now, that may offend some of you, but I'm telling you, be courageous and don't doubt me here. Where do you think these groups come from? Who do these groups vote for? It's Democrats that they vote for. And it's this Antifa group is, no Trump, no USA, no this, no that. These people are totally opposed. They believe the United States was guilty from the first days of our independence, founding, and what have you. They've been taught this. They've been taught this by the same people that probably taught Obama, that taught all these other Democrats and leftists, and have taught people in the media. Well, anyway, in 2008, we knew that's what was in store for us. And it was shocking. It was chilling. It was a wake-up call. And something else we were shocked by. We were shocked by how little time it took for it to appear that we had lost our country to people on the left. All during the Bush years, Republicans in power, the left was there. But with the election of Obama and his ascension to office, it looked like we'd lost the country overnight. So here comes Obamacare, and everybody's worst fears are realized. And so the Tea Party springs into action organically. There's no leader. There's no charter. There's nobody who made this happen. It was a bubbling up effervescence of average, ordinary Americans, many of whom had never been involved in politics before. And they get invited. It scares the hell out of Democrats and Republicans. It scares the hell out of them because it's real citizens who are not the result of money or fundraising or donations. And they are active and engaged, many in their case for the first time in their lives. The Democrats are so panicked by it, they create an artificial response to it called Occupy Wall Street. The way the Republicans react to it, start lying to them. Yes, we agree. Repeal and replace Obamacare. We're going to stop this spending. The Republicans said everything they needed to say to get the votes of the Tea Party and Republicans in 2010, and they did. And so the Republicans win back the House. And we immediately start hearing from them they're going to repeal and replace Obamacare, and they're going to stop this spending, no more debt limit expansion, all of this. But they never do it. It never happens. And we get excuses. Well, we really want to, but we can't do anything until we have the Senate. So, a few years later, Republican voters gave the Republican Party the Senate. And we thought, now we've got a way to stop Obama. But it turns out the Republicans said, no, we don't have enough votes to stop Obama. We really can't repeal or replace Obamacare, and we can't do anything about spending, and we can't cut taxes or any of this stuff until we have the White House. And the Republicans never expected to win the White House. I don't care what you're told. I'm telling you that Republicans in the establishment, inside the Beltway, never thought even, I don't care, Romney wasn't going to win. Whoever, Jeb Bush, they didn't think was going to win. It was all about getting a nomination and establishing the order for the Republicans within the establishment. Nobody expected to beat Hillary. They were scared to death of her. There isn't a Republican in that town that thought they were going to win the presidency. And they did. Trump did. And there were gulps, and there was panic all through the Republican Party, all over Washington, D.C. Oh, my God. Now, the last thing they expected to happen happened. Now they've got to govern. Now they've got to lead. No way. Don't want to do that. Now they'd lost their reasons for not being able to do anything. Reince Priebus was on this program 4 days after the election. The first thing out of his mouth before we even asked him a question, I know what you're going to say, and you're right. We have no more excuses. No more excuses. But yet they offered more excuses. You know what? We don't have 60 votes in the Senate, so we really can't do anything. Now, folks, after 7 or 8 years of the Republican Party promising every election to do everything Republican voters expect and promising to do these things. Republicans didn't not promise. They did. They were going to get rid of Obamacare, replace it, do something. We're going to cut taxes, going to stop this spending, and we were going to get control of the border. We were going to, if nothing else, we were going to put a stop to so much illegal immigration. And none of it. Even with a Republican, Trump, in the White House, none of it has happened. Now, this can't go on. The caller's point is, who in the world's going to vote for Republicans anymore after this? But if they don't, and if Trump ends up a lone Republican from 2019 through 2020, and the Democrats say have control of the House, which, by the way, isn't going to happen, whatever you think of the Republicans, the Democrats are in a much, much bigger mess when it comes to winning elections. And I know things can change and change on a dime, but the Democrats are not part of this discussion. It is an interesting question. What happens when the president of the United States is a Republican and the rest of his party is doing everything it can to undermine him and his agenda? What happens? What's in the minds of Republican members of the House and Senate after 2 years of openly opposing Trump, openly thwarting, after 7 years of promises, and now the chance to do it all? The Republicans have a chance to do everything they said they were going to do. They control Washington electorally. But Rush, they don't have 60. I know. 8 Democrats in the Senate can bottle it up. But they haven't gotten one thing done legislatively. Tax cuts, the Democrats can't stop. Folks, they have an opportunity to do everything they have been promising to do, a once-in-a-career opportunity. They're never going to have this kind of power. And what are they doing? Nothing. In fact, it's worse than nothing. It appears to outsiders that they are part of the effort to thwart and stop Trump. Do they think this behavior is going to be rewarded with re-election? Do they think that the American voter are going to blame all of this on Trump and re-elect Republicans and try to get rid of Trump? And what does Trump do when it comes time to run for re-election? Does he run as a Republican, or does he say, this party isn't going to exist? This party is killing itself. This party's eating itself. This party is committing suicide. I'm not going to be a part of it. There's a lot of questions here, the answers to which are still open-ended. I have to take a break now. I'm a little long, but we'll be back in a moment. Don't go away. You know, the Republicans are not going to be able to hide. You look at the GDP number out today, revised upward now to 3%. This is the growth of the U.S. economy in 7 months. Obama never saw this in 8 years. The unemployment numbers are moving in the right direction with real jobs being created. Obama never saw this in 8 years, and we're seeing it in 7 months. You want to talk about empathy? How about attitude? Look at the numbers of illegal immigrants not even trying to get into the country today simply because Trump and his administration have put the clamps down and are simply enforcing existing law. Here's Reuters. U.S. economy grew faster than initially thought in the second quarter, notching its quickest pace in more than 2 years. It's more than 8 years. Reuters. I mean, it's just the news, on balance, economically and otherwise, is far better day to day, attitudinally, than it was under 8 years of Obama. And all of this effort the Republicans are putting in to thwart Trump. And it's not just to thwart Trump. I mean, it's, as we've discussed, it's the establishment circling the wagons and really protecting itself against an outsider. They simply can't allow an outsider to succeed, but they're not going to be able to stop. Because whether they know it or not, the establishment doesn't control the behavior of 99% of the population. They want to. They want to be able to control it, but they don't yet. So it's going to be a conundrum, a multifaceted dilemma for these Republicans as to what to do. But it does portend interesting questions for Trump. I mean, he's sitting up there, and he's not an idiot. He can see that the Republican Party is his primary obstacle. He knows this. It's not the Democrats. The Democrats are doing what they would be expected to do. The Democrats are expected to try to stop Trump. The Democrats are expected to do whatever they can. What's unexpected is for them to be joined by Republicans. So what does he do? Does he remain a Republican? Does he go independent? Does he come up with a Trump party? And then what happens to disaffected Republicans who might want to also leave the party? Who knows what's going to happen? But there are some things going on that we haven't seen in our lifetimes politically that open-ended questions. Have you seen the pre-election polling down in Arizona? Jeff Flake is being swamped by his primary challenger, Kelly Ward. She has a 25-point lead. Still a year to go in this election, but it's a harbinger, a big-time harbinger. Details coming up. Hang on. Be tough. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. Rush Limbaugh, exercising and utilizing talent. Frankly, more than I need. On loan from God. Happy to have you here. 800-282-2882. Email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. That's one of the reasons why the drive-bys are so focused on separating Trump supporters from Trump. That is their objective. That's one of their many. I mean, their real objectives: get Trump out of office any way possible. If they could get him out of office by forcing him to quit in frustration, impeachment, what have you, they do it. But short of that, they're doing everything they can, and they have been since the get-go, to try to convince Trump voters that they made a mistake, that Trump is an embarrassment, that Trump lied to them, that Trump's whatever. And because if they can do that, or if they can make Republicans think that Trump voters are going soft in abandoning, and the Republicans will be encouraged to continue to stop Trump. So this effort, the Republicans they've rolled their dice. They're not going to help the Trump agenda. Now there's some overlap with Trump's agenda and these Republicans, and one of those areas overlap is tax cuts. Tax reform. This is a signature and identity issue with the Republican Party. And if Trump comes up, and he's going to Springfield today to introduce the plan, and if it contains elements of tax reform, tax cut policy that the Republican Party has always supported, they're going to be hard-pressed to not join this. The challenge for the Republicans is they got a lot of masters here. You, the voters. They have their donors, which is the biggest master. And then they've got Trump supporters. And if Trump in this case comes out with a tax reform proposal that a majority of Republicans in Congress like, it's going to be a real dilemma for him. Because The last thing they want is for, and believe me on this, not all. I mean, you've got the Freedom Caucus in there in the House. You've got some conservative members there, but it's not all Republicans. And you've got some conservatives in the Senate. But for the most part, the party itself, and not calling on top of the RNC now, but the party itself really doesn't want Trump to succeed. Now, you don't think that sounds strange, but it isn't when you realize that everybody is part of the establishment, and that membership comes first. And then your party affiliation is second. And if Trump, maybe I think should have done this first. I think Trump should have done tax reform first and forced the Republicans to support him. Healthcare, I know they made some tactical decisions and employed some various strategies, didn't work out, and it's too late to go back and redo it. But the point is, with tax policy here, tax reform or tax cuts, the Republicans are going to be hard-pressed to not help. Now, don't put it past them to not join the effort. I mean, that has been the basic operation up to now. They've just gone through the motions. They haven't really been serious about repealing Obamacare. You can't tell me they have. And they're not serious about getting check and spending. And immigration, you know damn well that the Republicans want to go along with the Democrats for amnesty if they had their druthers. But when it comes to signature Republican issue, particularly on the tax cuts for corporate side, the corporate tax rate and the middle-class tax cut, if Trump comes along, proposes something strong, the Republicans are going to be hard-pressed not to join that. And if they don't, they're creating more problems for themselves than they can possibly imagine. They just literally would be throwing away a signature issue, an issue that has defined them and set them apart from the Democrats. And if they throw that away because they decide whatever we do, we can't let Trump succeed because he's an outsider. We can't have an outsider succeed, come in here and show that an outsider can do it better than we can. So that's going to be very interesting to see. Now, the media is already started to destroy the Trump tax plan. It happened on CNBC today. And the way they're doing it is to claim that Stephen Miller, who is an anti-Semite nationalist in the Trump speechwriting staff, wrote the speech. Yeah, I'll get to you here in just a second. Grab soundbite number 11. This actually was Bloomberg. Oh, it was both of them, Bloomberg and CNBC. Grab soundbite number 11. What we have here is Francine Lacroix speaking with Toulouse Olorunapia about Trump's trip today to Springfield, tax reform, and this is their exchange.
There's a lot of media saying this was a speech that was crafted by Stephen Miller, not Gary Cohn. What does that tell us about the tone of the speech?
The challenge the president faces is that when he gets into campaign mode, when he gets in front of these adoring crowds, a lot of times he goes off the script and he starts talking about things that are not the message of the day, whether it's attacking Democrats or attacking fellow Republicans. That's the fear that a number of White House officials have. Now, the tax reform issue is something that the White House wants the president to be laser focused on because he does not have a major signature piece of legislation that he's passed in almost 8 months in office. So they're hoping that he'll be able to focus, stick to the script, and focus on tax reform during this speech in a way that will galvanize the American people in support of what he's trying to do in Congress.
So, you see, well, we're troubled by the fact Stephen Miller wrote the speech, not Gary Cohn. We'd much rather have the speech written by a liberal Democrat Goldman Sachs-ite than this anti-Semite Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is brilliant, by the way, and he's Jewish. He's not anti-Semitic. By the way, hey, Brian, put the guy's phone number on that, on this one, just in case they don't know where mile marker 99 is. Here is the CNBC side of it. This Joe Kernan speaking with Washington correspondent Eamon Javers. I'm sorry, it's Eamon Javers, about Trump's trip to Springfield today. Question: President Trump said to give a speech on tax reform later today. You have some details of what the president expected to say, and I guess some comments on yesterday's visit down to the hurricane.
This is going to be billed as a Main Street speech near America's Main Street, Route 66. That's going to be sort of the imagery that we're going to see today. And he's going to talk about shared prosperity having slipped away in this country. And he's going to say that we need to end the rigged system. So this is an interesting rhetorical choice by the President of the United States. He's going to say that the U.S. economy is rigged and we need to jumpstart it with tax reform, tax cuts across the board. That will help get the economy going again and bring back that shared prosperity. Politico this morning is reporting that Stephen Miller, the nationalist White House aide, is taking a big hand in crafting this speech. So we can expect some of that sort of populist rhetoric in this speech.
Two different drive-by media reports focusing on the speechwriter. How many times when Obama gave a speech did you know in advance who wrote it? And that whoever wrote it really was responsible for the contents? I mean, they never gave Obama speechwriters any credit because Obama didn't need speechwriters. He was so brilliant. He was so smart. But Trump, he's so dumb and he's such a pig that it requires speechwriters. And now he's got this nationalist speech. What is that? What is a nationalist speechwriter? Well, it's in their world, it's a pejorative, and it means an America-only kind of guy. This is a guy, Stephen Miller. He hates every other country in the world. He only likes the United States. Only the United States matters. And people around the world screwed them. That's what they want you to think nationalism is. Nationalism is simply make your country great. It acknowledges American exceptionalism. So, again, there's going to be some overlap here. Trump is going to propose some things that the Republican Party stands for. And the Republicans are not going... They don't want... This is tough to say because it's not universally true of all of them. But there are some of them, folks, that just like Democrats who do not want Trump to succeed no matter what. So the balancing act, he proposes something that's a signature issue of theirs. What do? It'll be interesting to see. I think they can do both. I think they can sound enthusiastic, make it look like, wow, this is great, we're all for this, and then stall the effort in Congress. Now, they got to be careful about that because they run Congress. So if they start taking all these recesses, well, you know, we got to go back home and campaign. It's an election year next year. We got the Halloween recess. We've got the Yom Kippur recess. We've got the Thanksgiving recess, the Christmas recess. There's not many working days. If they try that, not going to fly. And they better be paying attention to what's going on in Arizona. Jeff Flake, who wrote this op-ed basically trashing Trump, has an opponent, Kelly Ward. This is the woman that ran against McCain and came up a little bit short. Jeff Flake has just 21% of support from Arizona Republicans for re-election against Dr. Kelly Ward. She's coming in at 47%. This is a poll from JMC Analytics. It was a survey of 500 Arizona Republican voters. When you're down 25 points, this is characterized as being in almost irreparable shape. So Trump has his rally in Arizona, where 19,000 people, some inside, some outside. And there was a headline out there, Flake tries to make nice with Trump. That was in the Politico. And we know why. Because he's in dire straits here running up against Dr. Ward. Probably has seen these poll numbers. And here is a poll quote that an incumbent U.S. senator like Flake could be polling as low as 21% in his own primary, while a challenger like Ward is pulled 26 points ahead of him at 47%. That's almost unthinkable with nearly a full year to go until the August 2018 primary. When asked if Flake should be renominated in 2018, an astounding 66% said that someone else should represent the Republican Party on the Senate ticket. This is after, and what Flake thought that he was endearing himself. Flake's one of these guys that believes the media presentation of Trump and his voters. Flake thinks because the media hates Trump that everybody else hates Trump, so all he's got to do is get on the anti-Trump bandwagon and write that op-ed, and he's going to be celebrated and hoisted up and applauded, and it's just the exact opposite. And you know the rest of the Republican Party is watching. The New York Times misquoted Donald Trump's Charlottesville remarks in 5 different reports. And now the New York Times has corrected 5 stories on Trump's response to the Charlottesville protests, admitting in each report to misquoting what Trump said in the aftermath of violence. 4 of the corrected reports misquoted what Trump said about who's to blame for the violence. A 5th report from 2 of its star reporters misquoted what Trump said about the push to tear down Confederate statues. 2 reports misquoted this line from Trump's initial statement on the violence. Quote, this is what Trump said. We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides, Glenn Thrush, formerly of the Politico, moving up to the New York Times, bungled the quote in a report on the furious reaction to Trump's remarks. Here it is. Correction, August 14th, 2017. An earlier version of this article misquoted part of President Trump's statement on the violence in Charlottesville. He blamed many sides, not all sides, for the violence that left 1 woman dead. So Thrush, in reporting what Trump said that Trump said that there was violence on all sides. But he didn't. He said on many sides. Trump didn't misspeak on any of this. It was the media. Literally, these are misquotes. They're purposely misquoted articles. They made it up. And this is just one publication, the New York Times. Andrew Ross Sorkin also bungled the quote that same day in a report on outraged CEOs, which prompted an identical correction. Correction, August 14th, 2017, an earlier version of this column misquoted part of President Trump's statement on the violence in Charlottesville. He blamed many sides, not all sides, for the violence that left 1 woman dead. Now, look, I know that nobody sees the corrections. The damage was done, and it has been very damaging. But here's just, these 2 guys took the same quote, both reporters, and made it up. They said Trump blamed all sides. Trump didn't. He said many sides. You might think, what's the big deal? Well, because they're trying to set it up here. These people purposely lied that Donald Trump was sympathetic to the KKK and the Nazis. That's what they did. They lied. They put words in Trump's mouth and they quoted things Trump had never said to make it look like Trump was trying to defend the supremacists and the KKK and the neo-Nazis. Now, it's a huge correction. You might think it's not a big deal, many sides versus all sides. But it's a big correction because by claiming Trump blamed all sides, the Times was saying that Trump blamed Antifa. And in the media's minds, Antifa cannot ever be blamed. In Gary Cohn's mind, you can't blame Antifa. These are just citizens standing up for peace and freedom and equality. And that is flat-out BS. They are the violence. They are the aggressors. They are the anti-Americans. They are the provocateurs. And they exist in far greater numbers than the pathetic KKK, the pathetic neo-Nazis, and these white supremacists in electoral terms couldn't even fill a phone booth. We have some more corrections here from the New York Times. I want to get back to the phones. I'll get to these next ones next half hour. We'll put all of this at rushlimbaugh.com so you'll be able to read it yourself. Here is Bart in Tucson. Great to have you on the program, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you, Rush. Mega 1990 dittos.
Thank you.
First, I want to say, Senator Flake definitely lives up to his name. So I just wanted to let everybody know that. And my comment was, I think Rex Tillerson and Cohn have shown their true colors, and especially I thought Tillerson I always had a red flag when he spearheaded the change in the homosexual policy for the Boy Scouts, and so as far as I'm concerned, he's living up to my low expectations, and I'd love to see him fired along with Cohn, and I'd like to see them replaced with John Bolton and either Walter Williams or Thomas Sowell.
Speaking of which, John Bolton said last night that he has been cut off from Trump, that he is not permitted to talk to him or see him. Now, that would be the chief of staff, if that's true. In addition, the Secretary of Defense, Mad Dog Mattis, Trump has issued this immediate ban on transgenders in the military. And Mad Dog Mattis has suspended the ban pending a study. They need to do a study and then issue a report. Now, President issues a ban and the Secretary of Defense says, no, I'm going to stay the ban. We're going to do a study. We're going to find out if you know what you're talking about. Now, they didn't do a study when Obama just issued a blanket admission policy for transgenders. They didn't study that. There wasn't any report on that. So, now you got Mad Dog Mattis, you got Cohn and Tillerson. And, folks, this, it's problematic. Trying to be judicious here, but... A man, a legend, a way of life. By the way, the Washington Post is got a different take on Mad Dog Mattis, the defense secretary, and putting a stay on Trump's ban, transgenders in the military, and studying it. They say that he's not defying orders. They say the decision's been made, and Mattis is down with it. They're going to do a study here. Because Mattis wants to know what he's dealing with after it happens. So, details on this is coming up. But the Post is at least saying that Mattis is not being insubordinate here. And I did not want to leave this taste in your mouth that maybe Mattis was being insubordinate. People on the inside of this say that that's not what's going on. But with Cohn and Tillerson, it's a different matter. Entirely, which it's problematic, folks. I mean, these are key members of the administration, and if they are going to be in open, what would you say, disagreement or defiance, then it's I don't know if it approaches crisis status, but something that's going to have to be resolved. Inside the White House. And it's all based, we've got these stories. What Trump said at Charlottesville, as it appeared in the media, was made up, was totally made up. And here you have two members of his administration reacting to what the media reported Trump said, rather than what the president himself actually did say. I mean, look, everybody in that town reacts to the media. The media's got everybody scared to death. And so if the media is jumping all over Trump for being a racist and a sexist and all this, and these guys clearly don't want to be thought of as that, so they're going to do what they can to distance themselves from Trump if the media is saying this. It doesn't matter whether Trump said it or not. Now, you would think that these guys would be more inclined to go to bat for the president against a lying media. But they may not even know or didn't know at the time that that's what had happened. Who knows? I've got to tell you, I am shocked and stunned every day when I learn that people who I think know more than I do about things are so uninformed about the media and its tactics and its day-to-day operations. Shouldn't surprise me. I think people that interact with them every day ought to know far more than I do how they act and what they do. But they're all part of the same club, so speaks a lot. You know how I can illustrate some of this? Let's use the Colin Kaepernick example. And I'm going to do this because I've also had a couple emails. You didn't finish what you were going to say about Kaepernick. And I thought I had, but let me run through it again. I'll do this as briefly as I can. The NFL has not hired Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick walked out in the San Francisco 49ers. He had a contract. He walked out on it. He didn't want to play with them anymore. Becomes a free agent. He has no offers. The sports drive-bys are outraged. They think he's being blackballed because of his politics. He may be. And if he is, the people blackballing him have every right to do so. What do you think the First Amendment's free speech clause grants you? The right to say what you want politically? You're right, it does. Now, First Amendment says that government cannot stop you from saying what you want. It doesn't say the San Francisco 49ers can't. If you work someplace, your First Amendment rights do fall under the policies of your owner or of your boss or of your workplace. This is not a fine point, but the larger point is this. The media is trying to portray Kaepernick as a hero for courageously and with great guts criticizing his own country and criticizing the bias and the prejudice and the murderous police. It takes guts and courage. Now, there's every entitlement. Kaepernick, anybody else, has every right to say what they want to say about that. But two things are incumbent here. No one has the right to be heard. And this I find, when I say this to people who think they understand the First Amendment, that shocks them. Because they've never thought of it that way. Yeah, you can say what you want, but nobody has to listen to you. The second thing is, you have the right to say what you want. You have the right to believe what you want, but you do not have the right to not suffer any consequences from it. So if you are going to make a case as a player in the NFL that your country is rotten, that your country misteaches people of color, you're going to say what Kaepernick said, then you've got to be willing to accept the consequences of what you said. How many people do you think believe that Kaepernick should be applauded for courage and not have to suffer consequences for what he said? How does that work? Everybody, there's a price. There are consequences. There's going to be a reaction. Not everybody's going to agree with everything that anybody else says. Kaepernick is not a victim, but they're trying to portray him as a victim. He went out and he said courageous things. He had the courage to criticize his own country. And for that, he should be made a hero? That's not how it works. Nobody gets to, you don't get to go out and say provocative things and then be immune from criticism or consequences. Everybody is. And so that factors into what you're going to do. If you're going to go out and you're going to say things that are going to make it harder for the people who might hire you to do business, it makes perfect sense they wouldn't hire you. Now you add to that these people may believe you're not any good anymore. But if Kaepernick isn't being hired because of what he said, that's perfectly normal. Anybody who's been in the free speech business understands this the first time they ever say something controversial. Why do you think most people shut up? Why do you think most people don't want to go there? They don't want the reaction. They don't want the controversy. They don't want the criticism. So they don't say anything. They whimper around. They may react when somebody else does, but most people will stand or sit mute. And the reason is because they see what happens. Now, some of the responses, some of the circumstances are not fair, admittedly, but in a free and open society with the First Amendment guaranteeing political speech, there are consequences and there are ramifications. And the point is, the First Amendment does not grant anybody immunity from the consequences of what they say or from the reactions from people to what they say. And Kaepernick is being held up as somebody who should be immune. He should not be held accountable for what he said because we happen to agree with what he said, the media says. That's not how it works. If you're a football coach and you believe your team needs discipline and focus, if they're to have a chance, the last thing you want is a circus. For whatever reason. Talk to Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow, the exact opposite of Kaepernick, loves America, is a born-again proselytizing Christian. Why do you think he's not in the league? A lot of people think because there's anti-Christian bias, Mr. Limbaugh. There may be. But there are also people that don't want to deal with the circus. And if they don't, that's a consequence. You know, it's may seem unfair because you make value judgments on what someone says. Like you may value what Tebow is and what he says, and you might not think so much of Kaepernick and what he says or does. But in both instances, there are consequences for behavior and for reactions. And if you want to be on radio or TV, that's what Kaepernick, I think what he ought to do, Kaepernick ought to get a show on YouTube and then go to town. We can say anything he wants. Google would celebrate it. Google owns YouTube. But Jim Brown said it. Jim Brown said, you make up your mind what you want to do. You want to play football, you want to be an activist. It's that simple. Got to take a break. Back after this, folks. Don't go away. Okay, Trump has begun his speech in Springfield on tax reform, just now getting into it. There are 3 lies that the media and the Democrats say after every Republican tax proposal. They are this: the Reagan or Bush tax cuts didn't work. They then say the rich are not going to be paying their fair share in this, and that it has to be revenue neutral. Those are the 3 things. You watch. After Trump finishes, those 3 lies will be part of the media reaction to whatever he says. We'll deal with the specifics tomorrow.